Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to uncover the real hidden truth behind why you are always so burned out. We're going to completely dismantle a 100-year-old scam that has been haunting your modern brain. Seriously, if you have ever felt just totally drained by this standard Monday to Friday grind, you are going to want to pay close attention to the evidence we're about to lay out. 2 hours and 53 minutes. Wrap your head around that for a second. Out of your standard 8-hour shift, that is the actual amount of time you are likely doing real focused work. Exactly 2 hours and 53 minutes. I know, it sounds ridiculously low, right? Almost impossible. But take a beat and really think about the natural rhythm of your own day. So, what on earth are we doing for the other 5 hours? Well, research shows that 4 out of 5 of us are essentially engaging in what we can only call performance art at the office. You know exactly what I mean. The rest of your day isn't you being lazy. You're just shuffling browser tabs around, perfectly timing those little status updates, and sitting through totally pointless meetings that, let's be honest, absolutely could have been a quick message. We do all of this just to fill up a chronological container that was actually invented before our grandparents were even born. To really understand why we do this, we've got to look back in time. Picture a 1920s factory worker. They're doing intense physical labor, welding metal, lifting heavy parts, building things on a noisy assembly line. Now compare that to a modern knowledge worker, someone trying to solve incredibly complex problems by staring at glowing screens, wrestling with spreadsheets, and mapping out high-level strategy. We are literally comparing apples to a totally different universe here, yet somehow we treat the scheduling for both of these wildly different realities exactly the same. And the crazy part? The math just never changed. Henry Ford created this exact 40-hour schedule way back in 1926. Now, context is key here. Back then, this was actually incredibly progressive. It was a necessary ceiling. Ford ran experiments and realized he had to cap the hours to stop factory workers from dropping dead from 80-hour weeks of operating heavy machinery. But the tragedy is, we just copy-pasted this exact same industrial math and applied it straight to the digital age mind. The absolutely crucial point here is the massive, gaping canyon between cognitive fatigue and physical exhaustion. Think about it. Replying to hundreds of emails, navigating a tricky strategic pivot, analyzing dense data, that exhausts your brain on a completely different curve than physical labor exhausts your body. Cognitive fatigue hits you like a ton of bricks, and it recovers on a totally different timeline. Yet, from an entire century, no one has bothered to update the math to reflect how human brains actually work. Because we haven't updated the math, we've inadvertently trapped ourselves in a deeply flawed system. Let's call it the punishment loop. Because the modern office measures your physical presence, like is your butt in the seat, instead of your actual output, you get stuck. It's a systemic flaw where working efficiently is actually rewarded with, you guessed it, more work, rather than the actual freedom you've rightly earned. Let's break down exactly how this trap operates in the real world. Let's say you're on fire one day. You find a brilliant shortcut, and you finish your core work early. Say it takes you just 4 hours. Awesome, right? Nope. Because the system dictates you literally cannot leave the building or log off because the clock hasn't magically struck 5 p.m. So, because you're sitting there looking idle, your grand reward for being super efficient is getting handed someone else's work. The system doesn't grant you freedom. It just traps you at your desk with a heavier load, precisely because you were faster. This creates such a bizarre, backward office culture. We actively praise and reward the 7 p.m. lingerer, right? We think, wow, they're so dedicated, even if they're really just stretching out 2 hours of actual thinking into 8 hours of sitting around. Meanwhile, we quietly penalize the 3 p.m. finisher for leaving early, completely ignoring the fact that they were faster, more focused, and effectively crushed their entire job for the day. We're using an outdated industrial-era ruler to measure a modern digital age mind. And the biological cost of this illusion, it is incredibly severe. The data shows us that mental health doesn't just slowly, gently decline as you work more. No, it straight up falls off a cliff at exactly 39 hours a week. Once you cross that specific threshold, you aren't just getting a little sleepy. You are operating in a measurable state of cognitive decline. The structural damage of this 40-hour illusion is very, very real. But hold on, that 39-hour cliff assumes your job is the only work you do. We also have to factor in what we can call the hidden 60-hour marathon. The corporate system assumes everyone has the exact same energy levels and the exact same capacity to recover. But real life happens, right? When you add in the second shift, home chores, life admin, taking care of the kids, that 40-hour week rapidly inflates into a grueling 60-hour marathon that nobody is tracking on a timesheet. This proves something huge. You aren't burnt out because the work itself is too hard. You're burnt out because the structure you are forced to do it in is incredibly rigid and wildly outdated. So, what actually happens when we dare to change the structure? Well, let's look at the massive 2022 trials of the 4-day workweek. The results were mind-blowing. Across these trials, productivity didn't just stay flat, it actually shot up by 22%. Stress? It plummeted by 39%. Burnout rates shrank dramatically. And you know all those pointless filler meetings we talked about? They practically evaporated. It turns out, when people have fewer hours, the busy work loses its hiding place, and people fiercely protect their time. The data here is just undeniable. For nearly half of all workers, literally 50% of people, the standard 8-hour day is measurably too long. Why? Because they report they can knock out their entire daily workload in just 5 uninterrupted hours. We're at a point where a shorter work week isn't just some lazy fantasy or a utopian experiment anymore. It is backed by hard statistical evidence.
Look, I want to give you a very clear permission slip right now based on everything we've just uncovered in this explainer. You are not lazy. You are a variable in a rigged equation. That hollow, brain-drained feeling you get around 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, that isn't you failing at your job. It's just your brain idling. Its actual quest is finished, but that clock ticking on the wall simply won't let it leave.
Which brings us to a final, crucial question I want to leave you with today. Are you looking for your passion inside an 8 to 5 box? It is time to stop measuring your worth by the sheer number of hours you spend keeping a chair warm for a destination you didn't even choose. Based on the hard evidence we've explored today, ask yourself, is it finally time to step out of that 1920s box? Imagine what you could truly accomplish if you found your edge, the work you do better than absolutely anyone else, in half the time.